Hello and welcome to the Playtime with Rufus podcast with me, Mario Radinger. Have you ever wanted to work with higher dimensional beings yourself? Then why not join my transformative soul journeys quantum hypnosis training? In 4 clear, easy to follow modules, you will learn how to guide deep explorations filled with clarity, insight, and guidance for others. For more information, visit thesouljourneys.com. Hello. This is episode 16 of Playtime with Rufus, a spiritual and metaphysical podcast unlike any other. I'm your host, Mario, and I'm so glad you're here with us again. Us meaning our higher dimensional guest, Rufus, our incredibly gifted channel, Èmilie, and me, as we open a brand new chapter in our exploration of the human experience on Earth. In this episode, we finally move beyond the inner layers of the avatar and begin examining what Rufus calls the playtime's outside influences. If everything is vibration, then our environments, the objects and constructions in them, and even the people around us are not just neutral background elements. They are active participants in our human experience, or as Rufus likes to call it, experiment. By the way, I'm almost 100% certain this is not an accidental mix-up of words on Rufus's part. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. We begin with something surprisingly simple, clothing, but not in the way you might expect. Rufus suggests that what we choose to put on our bodies does far more than signal style or preference. The moment you step outside, an unseen interaction begins, one that can considerably reshape how the world responds to you and how you respond to it. And that interaction may not align with what you consciously intended. From there, the conversation expands to our home, not merely as a place we live in, but as something that quietly participates in our evolution. Rufus reframes the idea of home in a way that may challenge how you see comfort, stability, and growth. If you are changing, but your environment is not, what does that actually mean? And what happens when the outer structure no longer reflects the inner one? Those questions and many more will be answered. But before we take a deep dive into this fascinating aspect of Earthian life, we revisit the Russian doll model Rufus has been using throughout the season to explain the interplay of the various dimensional expressions of an energy being, or soul as some would say, and explore how and why different levels of what we call the higher self come through in quantum hypnosis work, depending on energy, intention, location, and readiness. As you can imagine, this part is especially interesting to me, and I find it fascinating that Rufus's explanations completely match my first-hand experience of working with my clients' higher selves for more than a decade. You will also learn more about the connection between Rufus and Èmilie, and why it's easier for some aspects of Rufus to come in and talk to us than for others. A lot of you have asked, is Rufus Èmilie's higher self? Are they her guides? Or something completely different? You'll find out today. If you have ever felt the urge to change your wardrobe after an inner shift, to redecorate your home during emotional growth, or to distance yourself from relationships that no longer resonate, this episode uncovers why that happens and what it means for your energetic alignment as an avatar in this very special playtime. And now, buckle up and enjoy the ride. This is episode 16 of Playtime with Rufus, where higher wisdom meets human curiosity. And now, while the magical effect of these powerful words is spreading out into each and every cell of Èmilie's body, I ask all well-meaning higher dimensional energies and beings who take care of us and work with us in the highest and absolute love to join us here and support us today.
Hi.
Am I speaking to Rufus?
Yes, we are now. Settle in just a moment.
Of course.
We are now okay to proceed.
Wonderful. And welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us again here today.
You're very welcome.
And let us know if there's something we can do to ease your integration or make Èmilie feel more comfortable.
We are encountering a different quality of energy within the body that we used to come through, which requires a little bit of adaptation, if we may say, but it will be done. It might just take a little longer for us to be fully and comfortably installed, if we may say, within this body.
All right. Take your time. This is actually something that Èmilie would like to have a bit more clarity on. You may be familiar with her current situation and the changes.
Apparently, there is something going on within the body, which is good news for everybody. But it is just a little more difficult for us to settle in. Maybe some aspect of us should take over just so it could make it easier to move on into our communication of today. Just give us a second, Mario. Here we are coming.
Of course.
Okay. We might use this aspect of us today just because it will be easier as it is the most familiar and the most, let's say, compatible with the body as it is right now, even if aspect of us would have loved to share today. But probably it will be best and it would save us time if this aspect of us would be the one speaking today, if it's okay with you and Èmilie, of course.
Of course, we appreciate any aspect of you to come and join us.
Perfect. Just know that another one was supposed to come through today, but apparently it is more difficult to settle in. And even for this aspect, somehow it is not as easy as usual. But this is okay. Nonetheless, it would not be an issue to our conversation. Might be a disruption in our usual rhythm or our usual way to move through Emily's body, but this should be okay. And yes, we will manage it.
Okay, very good. Èmilie was wondering whether the transmission here today may have any negative effect on what is happening in her body right now.
Negative. No, we will not say that. Negative for sure not. But it would definitely somehow be how could we phrase it? Challenging, at least for our end, because we are now in a need to adjust to the new complexity, if we may say, as the envelope, and it is not what we are used to. And so we will need to probably double our efforts on our end in order to make it smooth for all the parts involved because it looks like there are more than just Emily in this vehicle as we speak, which is okay. It will just, let's say, alter the passage or the flow that we were using up until now in order to come and communicate. So it is nothing to worry about on her end, but on our end, it is definitely something to take into consideration in order to excel or successfully use her own body in order to converse with you, which is not a problem at all. So you could be at ease on that matter. This is in no worries at all for what is developing or what is going on with Emily's body as we speak. It is just a little harder energetically, first of all, because her energy is shared and busy somewhere else per se and is actually highly activated in an other part of her body, which is somehow creating not a block, let's say another center of density in terms of energy and the way it is flowing and circulating within the vehicle. So for us to come and encounter, let's say, a diminution of the usual energy that we may surf on, if we may use that picture, and that we are able to ride along and move through her own body is a little different than what we are used to. It is okay though. We will just accommodate. It might be somehow less fluid, if we may say, or less smooth on our part, and we apologize for that. But we have to deal with whatever is going on, and we have to acknowledge the splits in the energy focus and the way it is now compacting or let's say activating at a specific part of her body in this way creating less energy that we can draw upon or that we can merge with, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. Is there anything we need to consider regarding the following weeks or months, even as this change is progressing?
Well, you know that this obviously will require probably more and more energy to be centered in specific parts and in a specific way of functioning within the vehicle of Emily's body. So we are not sure because to be honest, we're not quite familiar with this situation. We are not sure how it will impact our venue. What we can witness as we speak right now and what we can encounter as right now is something that we were not expecting to encounter energy wise, which is a little less to draw from. And in that sense, if this would be increasing on the other activities that Emily's body is taking part into right now, probably as it goes on, we will encounter that, let's say, it's not a lack of energy, but the redirection of the focusing energy somewhere else within the body will probably mean to us a little more challenge to come and work our way within the body the way we are used to it. But we could go around it. We will figure out a way to keep our communication going. We are not sure because of our lack of experience in that situation. We are not sure on how big the impact will be in terms of us being able to use all the parts that we are used to use in order to communicate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
So
does.
we're guessing that we will figure it out, us and you, as we go. But in terms of today, this will be okay as this aspect of us will come and will probably be the one speaking today. If this shift should increase within the body, we will see how it impacts our venue. But as for today, we are okay to continue as it is.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I trust that you let me know whenever there is something that needs to be addressed or mentioned.
Yes, and if we can feel any discomfort within the body of Emily, then we will let you know as well. And if we, let's say, feel or if she feels as well that need to maybe stop or end the communication earlier, then we will also let you know.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before we dive back into the material, I have a few questions regarding your connection to Emily. Would now be a good time to ask them?
Yes, of course. It's always a good time.
Okay. Because I am preparing the publication of the material, question came up regarding your connection to her. In the very first episode, you described yourself as being non-physical on the other side, basically being like us, but not in the physical, or what we are when we are not in the physical.
Correct.
And you also mentioned that your connection to Èmilie is a bit stronger than, for example, your connection to me.
Correct.
I didn't ask at the time what that means. Could you please explain your specific connection to Èmilie? Because I think when I first spoke to you years ago in Egypt, I was under the impression that we would contact her higher self.
Yeah.
And I would like to know whether this was actually the case and how you would place yourself in the context of her team, her higher self, her soul. Where are you to be found in there?
Okay, well, Mario, you know how we like to clear out the definition of wording first, correct?
Yes.
So let us ask, what is your definition, at least in that question, when you are using the term higher self? So then we can accurately answer the question.
Well, if you had asked me years ago when I first worked with Èmilie, I would have probably given a different answer. But now, based on what I've learned from you, what we've talked about, I would say the higher self is the player of the avatar.
Yes. Okay, so when you're speaking of higher self, you are thinking of the player of the avatar. Okay, all right. So the answer to your question is yes and no. Let us detail it. So remember, if you are accepting and if you are basically anchoring all this theory in the fact that we are one, right? To start with, like, let's say, imagine a big group or a bowl or Russians or whatever, if you want to picture it, but something that is big enough to contain many, right? So, in terms of higher self, you would have different degrees of higher self because you would have the higher self, like the boss of the higher self, if we may say, that will be the one. Okay, so the big Russian doll, we like to use the Russian doll example because it's pretty easy to understand and to visualize for you humans, right? So let's say that the higher self being the bigger Russian doll, okay? Then you take the Russian doll, you crack it open, you have a little smaller Russian doll inside. That would be the less higher self, but that would still be the higher self, right? It's just a different dimension or a different aspect. And we're talking about dimension in terms of what you call like a scaling. This definition of the term dimensions. On scaling, it will be like a little smaller energy wise than the big boss one. It will still be part of the higher self of Èmilie, but it will be a bigger one. And then you go down, right? Until you get the player higher self, because it's going to be the energy that is directly involved with the incarnation of Èmilie. Yes?
Yes.
Of Èmilie and of the different aspects of the players incarnated. Yes? So this one, if you want to call us this, not exactly. Let's say that this is included in us, yes, but we are probably a bigger Russian doll. So what you were under the impression when you had your session in Egypt, it was accurate in a sense of, yes, it is, or it was, because there is time on your playtime. So it was Èmilie's higher self speaking, but it was not the higher self, which is next Russian doll compared to Avatar. Yeah? Does that make sense? It was a bigger Russian doll. So it was like a higher self. Yeah? This is hard to explain, but we're pretty confident that by now you understand what we're talking about. Yes, it's like, imagine you have like this little energy. This is you as an avatar. Then you have a bigger energy that will be you as a player with the intention of having avatars. Then you have a bigger energy that will be you as a player plus, other aspects of you. Then you have the bigger energy and so on, until you're just one. Yeah. Then us, as you know us, as you call us Rufus, we will not be just the player energy of Èmilie. We will be somehow including her higher self as a player, but we will have also, let's say, other energy of other players, including because we will be a bigger Russian dolls of energy than what you're referring to. Is that making sense?
Yes, I think
Okay, so in terms of that, let's say some aspect of us will be directly linked, including the player, directly linked to Èmilie specifically, but other aspect of us would probably have a stronger connection to other aspects of self incarnated as we speak, just because it will be closer to the player. So imagine it's like if you have, how can we picture that? Let's take you and Èmilie, for example, even if it's not necessarily what it is, but at least you have an example, right? There is Mario. There is Èmilie incarnated as we speak, okay? Then you take the player of Mario. You take the player of Èmilie that is already bigger, right? Then this player might be represented by other aspects incarnated of the player. Yes?
right.
Remember, no time, so everything happens simultaneously. There is none before, after, it's now. So now let's say your player chose to experience in many different ways, okay? So therefore, you have different expression of your own player that is manifesting into different dimensions or incarnations with a certain avatar, including Mario and Èmilie. Are we good on that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if player Mario and player Èmilie are regrouping because they are part of the same next Russian doll, if we can say, then those will be part of a bigger Russian doll, therefore a bigger energy or energetic collective, if we may say, that will include probably other player, and that would be like a bigger hub of energy speaking. Are you still following us?
Yes.
Okay, this is what Rufus will be. So we will not be the higher that you call the boss or one. We will be somehow a collective of multiple energies that would be in between the one and in between the avatar. So according to your question, we would not match the definition of Èmilie's higher self, but we will match it according to our understanding, because we are somehow a higher self of Èmilie, except we are composed of multiple higher selves in terms of your definition. Yes?
Yes. A question.
Okay. Yes.
Would it be correct to say that the hub that my higher self player is a part of is a different hub than yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Well, at a certain level, because if you
Yes.
keep going, at one point you will merge. This is what we're trying to explain. So
On
if
your
we-
level.
So on our level, yes, correct.
Yes.
You are correct. You are not merging yet with the Russian dolls. In terms of the Russian dolls, you're not at the bigger one that contains both of you yet.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So on our case, we'll be associated to Èmilie's higher self, definitely, and especially the aspect of us that is right now, that the one that you hear speaking, that you call the homie. Yeah, this is definitely linked to Èmilie's higher self. Higher, not higher. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we're good on that. I'm just making sure.
We
So yeah,
are.
this is also why this aspect of us is, let's say, more at ease, right? Coming and using the vehicle that is tailor-made for Èmilie and for this part of the player, and so for her higher self in terms of your definition of higher self. So in terms of the next step when you are not incarnated, the energy that is coming in, the player energy, yeah?
Yeah.
So this is definitely something that is linked to us, and especially this aspect of us. Yes. So we are very familiar with Èmilie's energy because we are including Èmilie's energy. Does that make sense?
Yes. And does that mean that this is not the case, or not as much the case, with the father and the mother and the newbie?
Yes and no. Yes, because they would not be including at the same level. Let's say if you take this aspect of us, we're going to say I just for the sake of it. If you take this I that is speaking right now, the whole me, if you take this I, this aspect of us, it will be directly linked to Èmilie, right? If you
Right.
take other aspect of Rufus, it will be directly, so on the same level of Russian dolling, that's what we're talking about, it will be including other incarnated self, okay? And then we would regroup in, well, we use the hub because this is in your language what could be the closest to accurate.
Yeah.
So we use the hub. So we would regroup within the hub that will be composed of all of those expression of self that would merge into one bigger expression of self that you will call Rufus. Yes? So
Yes.
some aspect of Rufus will be very familiar and very much at ease dealing with Èmilie's energy only because it would be a subdivision coming into that playtime. Other aspect of us, because they're subdivided into a different avatar, when you come back in and they have to go back the other way, it would maybe a little different because they know a familiar way somewhere else, right?
Right. Yes.
So in that sense, you are indeed constantly speaking through Èmilie higher self, but it depends on what Russian doll level you are referring to. The answer might be yes, accurate yes, or the answer might be no, just because the definition of higher self is a little bigger or a little smaller than what we could agree on. Yes?
Yes. Does that mean that the 4 aspects we have encountered so far are more or less on the same Russian doll level?
Yes, we are on the same Russian doll level, but we are not necessarily on the same frequency level.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But we are part of the same Russian doll. You're good with that. Yes.
Yes. If I try to remember the first time I worked with Èmilie, I think I was talking to the father aspect. At least that's the one that sounded most familiar to me. Can you confirm this and explain why that aspect came through in Egypt and not you?
That's a very good question. You know, like as a collective, you have energy flowing in and out of this body, yes? And sometimes part of us are actually interested in the subject that is going to be discussed, or interested in the experiment of coming through a body at the tea time in your playtime that is done, or some aspect of us might be already being used energetically on a different level or on a different playground or at a different, let's say, occupation, if we may say. So depending on what happened that day in your playtime, you would have one or the other aspect of us coming. If there is a particular reason for that, it could be many reasons. From what we recall, you had the father just because at the time, with the energy level of the place you were in, with the energy within Èmilie's body, with the energy within yourself, and with the way it needed to be conducted to have a desired impact, it needed to be the father. And also because at the time of your playtime, it is highly possible that other aspects of us were already on a duty, if we may say, or we're already manifesting or creating something else. Yes? So there's also this to take in consideration. It's not because we are not in a time frame, not incarnated, that we are not doing anything. Yeah, this is also, we need to mention that because it is not doing something that you can comprehend on that level of the game, but it is something anyway. Yeah. So we might be at time on duty or creating or let's say busy, that would sum up everything. So some aspect of us will be coming instead of other also because they probably are more free of coming and discussing at the time. But remember, when something like this is created in your playtime, when you have what you call a transmission event or conversational events with energetic beings that are not incarnated per se in your playtime, normally you need to take in consideration that a lot is involved. the energetic level of the place you do it, the energetic level of the person itself that is going to incorporate somehow the energy being, the person that is receiving the energy being. So basically, Èmilie, you, the place being Egypt, if you have people around that, you need to also take into consideration the energetic level of the other people that will be somehow in the same geographic place, and that would, without you knowing, interfere energetically with the work you're doing. You also have to take in consideration our energetic level at your tea time of this, and our, let's say, busyness or not busyness, and all of this needs to somehow create a mapping or a codec or however you want to call it, but something that will match and create a possibility of manifesting a conversation. Yes?
Yes.
It's not always as simple as say, oh, I want this aspect to come through this body to have a conversation with this body in that place at this given time of your playtime, and let's do this. If the energetical level are not matching that codec or that, let's say, energetic bundle that is needed for it to happen this way, then it would not manifest. See, it's still creating on your playtime. We already talk about this, like intention, action, manifestation. This is how you're creating. Now, creation exists outside of your playtime as well, meaning on our level, we need to create as well. And if you're mixing different level of playing game, different what you can call dimension in a sense of, world, okay? Like what you call the 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, and yada, yada, yada. Basically, if you're speaking in terms of dimension, since every aspect of self is creating at the same time, because outside of your game, there is no time. So basically, imagine constantly a creation creating. Yeah. You have to also consider the fact that it needs to be a right set of expression of self being able to co-create at the given time in your playtime.
Right.
And it's complicated, isn't it?
It makes sense. You're doing a great job, as usual.
Perfect. Good. We're happy with that. But yeah, just keep in mind all this. When creation is involved, you need a recipe. Yeah, perfect. This is a good wording. Basically, you need a recipe. If you messed up the recipe or if you're missing an ingredient to your recipe, you're not going to get the same result, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So depending on the result you want, you need to use different recipe. Whatever needed to be created in Egypt at the time of your session together was a certain result. It needed a certain recipe, and the recipe available and given at the time was not this aspect of us.
Yes, that explains why the second time we worked together, I believe it was the first online session we did, the aspect we call the mother came through.
Yes, and because also the subject that you are gonna dive in is also carrying an energetical code or imprint or however you want to put it. So basically, it does matter as well. So at the time, if we're recalling correctly, it was something that was very touching base on the creative aspect of Èmilie, the feminine aspect of Èmilie, that would be heavily illustrated by a mother figure in your world, and the energy matching this motherly figure will be probably the aspect of as you call the mother, and it's for a reason. So this is probably why this aspect of us came at this given time in your playtime to talk on the subject that mattered at the time. That was the result that was necessary to create with a certain recipe. And the key ingredient to that recipe, in order to be well received and well created, was the aspect that you call the mother.
Right. So would it be correct to say that today you needed to change up the recipe spontaneously?
Yes. Today, let's say the aspect of us that was called and that felt, if we may use that term, coming to discuss with you was the mother. You probably heard it at the beginning, but because the energy codec of the mother when it comes and use the body in order to have conversation is different than the way this aspect that I am is doing it. It was encountering difficulties because of what was already happening within the body. Yes. So let's say in order to make this a non-wasted conversation and something that we could actually get somewhere, we needed to shake a bit the recipe because we needed to somehow obtain something. It's the same way sometimes you want to make a cake. Okay, you don't have eggs, but you have bananas, or you have, like seeds or whatever you can substitute for. Then you're going to use this, which was not your original intention because you knew it would have been probably closer to what you wanted with the egg. But because the egg are not to be used because there is no more eggs or because they cannot be broken or whatever, they already boiled, then you have to use banana. Okay. So it will still give you a cake. The cake would not be exactly the same because probably the other aspect of us would have used different picture, would have probably used a different energy currents to convey certain stuff that you're about to talk about. That would be probably why it felt the need to come and have the conversation. But because of the simplicity that we encounter when this aspect come and speak, we decided that with this situation going on, it would be probably better for this aspect of us to come.
Yes, I understand. Thank you so much for clarifying.
You're welcome.
One last question in this context.
Yes.
As you know, when we do quantum hypnosis sessions, the aim is usually to reach or tune into the player higher self of the avatar.
Yeah.
Can you confirm this from your perspective? Is that the Russian doll that we usually connect to in these?
Not all the time. Sometimes you connect higher. It will depend. Remember, the recipe is heavily imprinted by the subject energy that whoever is coming to communicate will go through, right? So depending on the ability of the subject to receive, in terms of energy, you can tap higher than the player.
Yes, that would explain why it feels different working with different people, talking to different aspects of their higher self.
Yes, because think when you say higher, it's very vast. If you agree on the concept that everything is one, imagine it could be like we said before, higher. Yeah, it could be very, very a big higher, or it could be a smaller higher. So you have a spectrum of what you call higher self that is actually correct in its definition because it is a higher self than the self that you have laying down in front of you, but it would be a different degree of higher self. And therefore, it would probably, for you and for the subject, feel very different in function of what kind of energetical being you're receiving in your conversation.
Is it sufficient to leave it that vague and just leave it up to whatever higher Russian doll can be reached in that moment? Will it automatically be the right one?
Absolutely. It will be the right one just because the intention, right? Remember, everything you're sending is based on intention in your realm and through action. So you have the perfect combo because you have an intention. Your subject is coming with intention or question or however you want to put it, but it has theme, it has stuff that it needs to be tackling and that it needs answer to. This is the intention, and the action taken is to actually come to you, have this session, allowing themselves to change their entire alchemy on that day and receiving whatever is going to come through. So because of all this, whatever is going to come through is going to be always what they need at the key moments in your playtime. Correct?
Correct.
Remember the glass. You cannot throw a glass at somebody that is thirsty. It's not going to drink anything out of it. You have to pour it down little by little. This is the same thing. You cannot throw a higher that has a very, very substantial energy through a subject or a vehicle that is not ready to receive whatever information is going to come. Because if you go higher on the rational level, the higher you go on the rational level, broader your spectrum is going to be in terms of conceptual, metaphysical knowledge, basically like a detachment from this materialistic world and playtime. So you also need a subject that is within that vehicle designed for this playtime to be able to integrate, digest, receive, and put back out the information. So because of this, the subject is coming and having this experiment. The goal in the recipe is not to throw stuff that they cannot comprehend, receive, digest, integrate, and put it back. Correct? It needs to be set of information. And remember, information is vibrational, it's energy. So it needs to be set a code or whatever of information and energy and vibration that it is going to come in that will make sense somehow, either right away or either, with time, with the subject and where they at in their playtime. Yes? Where they at in their evolution within an avatar.
Yeah.
So sometimes you will have the next Russian doll, which we would refer to as the player, that will come through and it will be the higher self and it will give information. Sometimes you will have the higher Russian doll, so let's say the bigger player that will come. Sometimes you will go even higher. Sometimes you would reach a huge Russian doll that would come and pour down some information. And you will probably notice that the delivery of information, the nature or the depth or the substantial aspect of the information varies as well. Sometimes it's very close to what you know and what you understand in 3D manner, right? It will be very close to that. Sometimes it will be a little broader in terms of metaphysical, in terms of more conceptual, in terms of a little less tangible, but it will be more evasive. It will be like reaching a little further in what you think you know and understand of your world and yourself and how it works. Yes. So as a reporter or as a hypnotist, you will be able to attest that some of the conversation you have would and could be placed on different level. Yes. And this is how this is how you can somehow conceive in your mind which aspect of the so-called higher self you're tapping in. Are you onto the next Russian doll? Are you onto the next one? And then you can see where you're tapping, and that could also give you an idea on the frequency level of the player itself that is also incarnated in the doll. Because remember, players also run at different frequency, right? So when an expression of self is taken to come and be incarnated in your playtime, okay, the part of self is being crafted from may already resonate at a different frequency, at a different vibrational system, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That would somehow influence not only the avatar life and evolution in this game and the way it's playing the game, but your conversation in terms of what you're reaching. So you have two options. When you feel that you're reaching a higher self that is, let's say, wiser or that have a perspective on things that is a little more enlarged, yes, it's either because the player itself is already crafted from a higher vibrational energy, or because you just tapped into a higher Russian doll.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. And my experience certainly confirms that. I feel like I've tapped into, or the people I've worked with have tapped into different layers of these Russian dolls. Yeah.
Yes. And probably if you had recurring traveler, let's call them that way, if you had recurring traveler, then maybe the first time what will pour out of them will be a certain aspect of messages, right? Then the next time it would have a different flavor. If you had recurring, or if you're gonna have recurring traveler, try to notice if you see a difference between the first conversation you had and the second one.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that the first one is going to be lower and less interesting than the second one, or less broader on the spectrum. It just means it might be different. And also, this could give you a good idea on how the being in the avatar is evolving in the playtime.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
I'm reminded of something I encountered in the Seth material. I believe you are familiar with it.
Yes.
I remember that they had as well an entity come through that they called Seth 2 at some point. It felt different to the normal Seth. And I think that Seth 2 entity described itself also as being somewhat higher, in quotation marks, more removed from physical reality. That came through in the way it expressed itself verbally as well. Would that
Yes.
be an example of two different levels of Russian doll?
Yes, that would. Two different level of Russian dolls within the same Russian dolls.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So somehow, this is why it's so hard to name things, right? But humans, in that playtime, it needs to be named. And this is complicated a lot of things, right? But because it needs to be named, let's say in that case, Seth 1 and Seth 2 are exactly the same Seth, right? It's just you capture them a different layer of the expression of self that they are.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Understood. Is it possible or even necessary or planned, or I don't know what word to choose here, for Èmilie to ever connect or tune into a higher Russian doll than you?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course it is. It is always possible, but remember, you need the right set of everything. You need everything in resonance. So you need the subject, you need the other subject, you need the place, you need the intention, you need the topics, you need the goal, what you're trying to achieve, you need the energetical aspect of pretty much the entire situation to vibrate this intention of reaching higher. But yes, it is actually perfectly possible.
Okay. That's interesting.
It's just on this one, remember, since we started the work, you're calling upon Rufus, right?
Yes.
So Rufus you get. Yes.
And we love working with you, Rufus.
And so do we.
It would just be for the purpose of research. If there is ever an opportunity to have another level of Russian doll come in at some point in the future, it would just be interesting to have that happen. We would appreciate it.
Yes.
Just to know what it's like.
This could be happen for sure. The only question mark that we have now is with everything that is going on energetically on the physical matter for this body, would it be we don't want to say good enough, but would it be a strong enough set of energy available for it to happen? Or would it be necessary to wait until the physical creation is done? So there is a little more energetic material freed up in order to, create that setup that will call for a higher Rufus doll, if we may say.
Of course, there is no rush at all. If this happens next year or in 5 years or 10 years, who knows, at some point.
But you could definitely ask. Remember, Mario, when you set up the intention of the session, if we may call it, when you call upon an energy non-incarnated, what you're going to ask for is also of importance. So if you're going to want to try at one point to get a higher level or a higher version doll of us, then you could mention it right away when you're calling or when you're saying it's okay. And at the same time, when Èmilie is making space and she is ready and she's saying, okay, Rufus, I'm ready for you, then she can also have that intention. Okay, Rufus, higher. If we say that, we're ready for you. This is also something that needs to be done on your part because remember, since on our end there is no wording, everything needs to be clear in terms of reference and definition and what intention is behind the words used, yeah?
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
And I believe with that, we can dive back into the material.
Okay.
Last time, we talked a bit more about the VE.
Yes.
And I think this was pretty complete for now, unless there is something we have not talked about when it comes to the VE that you feel we need to discuss or that would be worth discussing. I know you always say there's always more. But
Yeah, we were about to say just that.
But if there's nothing urgent or missing out of our conversation so far, maybe today we could dive into the next aspect we listed at the beginning of this project.
Yes, we could. And also, Mario, we do have a question, though. Everything that is discussed could always be elaborated on or enlarged. And also, once you reach that point, this is also a good way to have a higher aspect of us. Yes, because that means somehow you integrated, digest, and put out the information given, and you're ready for more. This is going to be shared, correct? So do you have the intention of doing like a Q&A stuff if something that we said is mentioned and digested and received and integrated and put back by you, Èmilie, and the rest of the people who's going to dive in this work? We have the possibility to open back conversation based on what's been said and shared and say, okay, now we want to know more about that in particular. Are you going to take question regarding something that's been evoked, or is it not something you're planning on doing?
It's actually something that we had in mind. We wanted to offer an opportunity for Q&A at some point.
Okay, because if you do that, let's say if you have a discussion 101 on the subject, okay, and then this is completely integrated and the frame of reference, the background of it, the concept of it is well taken and everybody is on the same page to move forward, then you can go back on the same subject and ask for more detail or more layered or enlarged understanding on that subject. And when you do that, don't forget to have the intention to call upon energetical beings that are indeed aware and able to discuss this specific topic with a higher perspective.
Okay.
You see what we're trying to say, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Either it's going to be us, because there are always possibility to go in more detail and to go higher onto something. Either you're going to get directly a bigger rationale that will come and speak about a topic in a very different way, and that would bring a little more out of it, yes? But this needs to be, like we said before, a recipe. The ingredients need to be okay and ready to go further. So you need to have your eggs ready. Yeah? Okay.
Okay. Thank you for emphasizing that.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next aspect on our first draft of a list would be the outside influences that an avatar encounters in this playtime.
Yes.
We talked about the first aspect, which was being a player while knowing that one is more than a player. We talked about the second aspect, which were the different layers of the avatar, the physical, emotional, mental, and the VE. And now the next would be outside influences. And I believe at the time you mentioned as examples the environment, nature, objects, and construction.
Yes. We could add other avatar as well.
Right. That would actually be number 4.
Okay.
At the time, number 4 was connection to other avatars.
Okay. So we already subdivided. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take, we say nature, construction, and environment, correct?
And objects.
And object. Okay. So basically, let's have a common starting point for all of them. Yes? Because we finished with the VE, then we will start with the kind of VE here. Yeah. So everything, as we mentioned, whereas is nature, environment, people, object, construction, everything that you will experiment in that playtime is basically vibration. Yes, it's a combination of vibration. It's a level of vibration. It's a frequency. It's a coding, however you decided to illustrate it in your mind or to word it. know that everything carries a vibration. Therefore, because yourself as an avatar is also made of vibration, meaning your body is made of vibration, then everything else will interfere with yourself as an avatar and therefore as a player. Okay? Because remember, the player is playing the game, so whatever the avatar is feeling, somehow the player is nourishing itself with it.
Right. And that would be the case with any sensory input.
Yes. Yes. So we're going to start with object. We can start with clothing because that will be something very easy for an avatar. Yes. You're playing the playtime that you cannot be nude all the time except in some specific area and you need to put clothes on yourself. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Choice of clothing. First of all, let's talk about choosing because we are aware that some avatar rather having the exact same clothes all the time because it allow them to have one less choice to make in the day.
True.
True. Okay. We're not going to talk about this. We're going to talk about avatars that are actually decided to tackle the fact of having to choose different object and therefore clothes to put on themselves. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. You would see that the clothes you have in your closet or in whatever you put your clothes in, they will have a specific impact on you that would differ from somebody else. Let's say if Emily opens your closet, what she will see would have an impact on her that is completely different from what it has on you. It's because you chose your clothes because somehow there was a compatibility on the frequency or the vibration they were sending back at you and what you wanted to put in, correct?
Correct.
So this has a very high importance because what you're going to put on yourself, how you're going to dress as an avatar is going to feed yourself as an avatar is going to feed therefore the different layers that you have. So physical, emotional, mental, and because it's feeding you, it's also feeding the rest of the world because once you got the information, integrate, digest, you put it back. Correct? So when you're choosing something, you have to, and this is a subject that is so vast, so big that we could dive in for years. So we're going to recenter it and talk about it according to the original goal, which was to help people and help Avatar on how to align better and manifest better, or at least a life closer to what they wish to have, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to keep this goal in mind in order to narrow the subject. Otherwise, we're not going to finish.
Okay.
Okay, so keep in mind, this is because you as an avatar wants to put all the chances on your corner in order to manifest and create the experience in this playtime that will somehow align with yourself the most. And when we're talking about alignment, that would fulfill you the most. And basically, we talked about it in previous sessions or podcasts or how you want to say episodes. We talked about it previously. It's referring to a certain state of being and what it makes you kind of feel. So we mentioned that joy is basically something that is very pleasant and that will makes you fulfilled, that will makes you enjoy your experience, right? But sometimes you also need to enjoy another type of experience like sadness because you want to see what it feels like to be sad, and this will be as a player, not necessarily as an avatar. Or maybe you want to also experience exclusion or marginal, what it will be, how it will resonate with you to experience that. So basically, the first thing you need to decide is what kind of experience you want to be today. Okay.
Mhm.
Today, I start my day and I want to feel good in my body. Or today, I start my day and I want other bodies to notice me. Or today, I want to start my day and I want to make sure that I look nothing like the environment I'm going to be in. Okay. If you can be clear with yourself and answer that simple question on what do I want to experience today, it will already help you choosing the right object to put on. Because when you buy stuff or when you surround yourself with objects that you accumulate that object on a tea time in your playtime with a set of information that you are at that moment. And this would not be the same as another moment of your given life in this playtime. So basically, all the stuff that you accumulated, all the stuff that you're surrounding yourself in terms of object, and specifically in this example, in terms of clothing, depending on the day, depending on how you are and of your state of being, you're going to resonate more or less with it, even if you chose them to start with. Yes? So when you open, you decided to put on some clothes, ask yourself, today, what is it that I want to experience? I want to experience feeling good physically, being at ease physically. Okay. Now let's make sure that you pick the clothes that the material it's made of is going to feel good physically on your body. That the color that you're going to pick, somehow when you're looking at them or when you're putting on you, it's going in that sense. It's not clashing. It's not putting you in a mood. It's not giving you a different energy than the one you want to receive. Because all of this is carried within a simple piece of clothes. The material itself, it's already an information. You're going to have to take it on and it's going to go back out. For you, is the way you're going to feel in this material. For others, is going to be the way they're going to receive this material. They're going to judge it somehow. Oh, you're wearing a cheap material. You're wearing an expensive one. They don't know how it feels because you have it on. They don't know. But you know how it feels. You're not really seeing it from the outside. You're seeing it from the inside, correct?
Correct.
So when you're picking it, you're paying attention to the material. You need to also be prepared that it's not because for you it feels good and soft and pleasant that is going to have the same reaction in the world you're going to step in. So you need to be okay with that. If the experiment you're seeking today is feeling good, you need to be okay with the fact that maybe if you feel good, others are not going to take it this way, and it's okay. It's a consequence that you're ready to tackle because all that matters to you that day is to feel good. Right. And in that sense, you can feel whatever the heck you want in your closet that has a texture, so a material, that has a fitting, so if it's tight or large, that is actually fulfilling that goal of yours, which is to feel good in it. Okay? Then you have to pay attention to the color. And then only then, once you're stepping outside and you're confronted to how your environment is responding to your choice, you need to ensure that you're still keeping that direction of it makes me feel good. Because sometimes you have the sensation that, oh, I'm going to put that on me. It makes me feel good and I don't care what else happened. And then you step outside into the world and the reaction coming out is so strong that instead of feeling good, you feel now bad because you're unable to somehow shield yourself from other reaction. Okay? It doesn't have to come from other avatar. It's summer, you're wearing black, mosquitoes in your realm are very attracted by dark colors. You go outside and then you get bit the hell out of those mosquitoes, right? And then it makes you feel terrible. So this is not just in other humans' eyes. It's also, where you at. You were inside, you were wearing clothes, you were feeling good, you stepped outside, it's too hot. The material you choose makes you sweaty. You're not going to feel good either. So you see, only with one piece of clothes, you have already so many data to collect, so many information to take into consideration in order to stay lined up with your original goal, which was, I just want to feel good in my clothes. I want to feel at ease, and I want to make sure that all day long, this object that I'm putting on me is going to help me feel that. This object you're putting on you is also a set of vibrations that will be altered with other vibrations send its way. Do you understand that?
I believe.
Okay. Like we say, it's a very, 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 very large subject. It's going to be very complicated to narrow it down just because it has so many aspects of it that one being incarnated in a human body is not used to take into consideration. But the simple piece of clothes you think you're choosing that day could actually nourish your alignment or could actually take you far away from it just because the way you're going to handle the response it triggers.
So the intention here for someone who wants to live a more aligned life would be to stick with it, to kind of remind yourself what your original intention was.
Yes, but also to know your limits. And this could be also sometimes what you call arrogance, which we don't like that word, but let's call it that way, arrogance, which would be linked to your ego side, right? Your ego layer. So basically, if you decided to start with that you can wear whatever the heck you want, as long as you feel good in it, you're going to be able to handle everything that would, come conflict with. And then when you start your day, after 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, you realize that in fact, if you're in your authenticity, everything that you get in return from wearing those clothes is actually breaching. It's actually getting to you, whether it's mosquito bite, whether it's the heat and the sweat, whether it's the other fellow's avatar looking at you and judging, whether it's the piece of clothes that is making your body stand a certain way that you're not ready to take into accountability, the reaction it creates from your surroundings. So it's all of this, okay? Sometimes you think you're able to, in your bones, I'm going to step into the day knowing that I don't care what happens. I'm ready for it. This is what I want to be. This is what I want to wear. This is how I want to feel. This is how I want to experiment. But you have to be also true to yourself and see that sometimes what you think you can handle and what you think you can experiment is a little further away from your actual experiment. Yes? And sometimes when you step out and when you have to deal with all the other vibrations somehow merging and somehow either creating friction or creating like blossoming or however you want to call it with your own, then sometimes you're not just ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, it's okay. It's okay. Decide which one is stronger. So basically, the feedback you're getting from what you're sending, is this feedback stronger to the point that it makes you not feel at ease and it makes you not enjoy your experiment? If it's the case, decide what it is. Another choice again. Okay, do I want to still go through this and see if I can spend the whole day not feeling at ease, which was not my original intention because I wanted to feel at ease. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to just enjoy the day and my experiment today. So am I ready to go through the mud and see what comes out of it and change my proper directive to start with? Or no, this is really not what I wanted to receive. So I'm going to make sure that I put on objects on myself that will keep me somehow safe and that will keep me within the experiments that I wanted to have initially. Do you understand?
Yes.
So here again, choices. And there's not good and bad choices. It's just choices. Because you're not living this game alone, you will have to really understand that as innocent as a clothing could be, once you put it on, it's going to create a new pattern of energy, a new vibrational aspect of yourself that is going to be confronted to your playtime and every element within the playtime, meaning other avatars, so humans, animals, insects, whatever, nature, so trees, plants, however you want to leave it, the weather, you name it, everything that is basically within your word is going to somehow interact with your new set of vibrations because it's a constant exchange of information, of vibrations. Constantly. You cannot escape it. Otherwise, you don't play the game. So you need to know from the get-go that once you're making your first choice of dressing a certain way, you're going to ultimately trigger some response from the world, whether it's going in the right sense in your direction, whether it's going to the opposite, whether it's going neutral, you're going to have some response to it. So now, once you go out and you are sensing those responses, how do you decide to go? Are you okay with experimenting those responses, or do you retreat and you change and then start to trigger other response? Do you see what we're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. And this will be true for everything. As soon as you are surrounding yourself or putting on yourself an object, this object will automatically alter your own set of vibration because it's now in your environment or now on your vehicle or in your vehicle sometimes. So it will alter your set of vibrations. And because it did that, it will also alter everything else set of vibration. And because it did that, it will alter your experiment and the way you're moving through the game.
May I ask a question here?
Yes, you may.
What would be the consequence of this choice, for example, when choosing material that is more synthetic compared to clothing material that is organic? There's a movement, so to speak, of people who are very focused on wearing materials such as linen, for example, or organic cotton compared to polyester or other synthetic fibers.
Yes.
What would be the direct impact of either of these choices on the player?
On the player or on the avatar?
The avatar, sorry.
Okay. Well, let us dig a little bit into this. The person who is choosing to wear linen or organic material, cotton and all this stuff and non-synthetic, more chemical like material, right? The simple fact of knowing that this material is more organic, so more close to nature, is already a set of information, a set of vibration that is feeding them in a way that is pleasing them because it's pleasing them mentally, because they are mentally thinking and knowing that they are doing something right. And this is in their mind, right? We're not saying it's right or wrong. We're just saying from an avatar aspect. So I'm an avatar. I chose to wear organic cottons or whatever because I simply feel like it's better, because it's less polluting for nature, because it's more natural to my skin, is closer to my original vehicle, is closer to my natural environment, because it makes me already feel intellectually and emotionally and perhaps physically as well that I'm more aligned with what truly matters to me, which is nature, which is ecology, which is, you name it, something that is basically in my foundation, what I want to experiment. Then if I choose that, I'm already there somehow because I feel good about myself for wearing something that I qualify to be aligned with what my value is. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if I choose this, now what I intellectually believe, what my feeling, what my guts believe to be good, perhaps my body will not believe to be good once I stay in linen and it's 40 degrees outside and I'm starting to itch or I'm starting to sweat or something is not actually as pleasant as I thought it would be, which could happen. So as an avatar, I would now have put something that I thought was nourishing myself, but maybe my experience in it will be not as pleasant as I thought it would be. Now, this is where your choices come in. What do I privilege? Do I privilege the fact that I feel aligned with myself because it's matching all my known values in terms of ecology, in terms of natural, in terms of I want to take care of my skin, in terms of I feel good intellectually, egoically about myself for making that change and using natural material because I believe it's better? Or do I decide no, this is not feeling good on my body and I'm going to go back to something that is lighter, that is not itchy, and that makes me feel better physically. And, I decided, yeah, whatever I truly felt that I thought I cared for, actually my physical comfort is more important. There is no right or wrong. It's just a matter of what do you choose to experiment. You have to take into consideration that you're made of layers, and therefore sometimes your own layers are not in agreement in terms of what you're experimenting. Sometimes your intellectual layer or your mental layer and your emotional layers are telling you something, but your actual physical layer is telling you the opposite. And you're like, okay, then what do I choose? Do I choose to please that aspect of myself and sacrifice or, be a little less comfortable in this aspect of myself? Or do I choose to privilege this one and be less comfortable with this? It's really up to the avatar. But sometimes you can have everything matching and everything being in harmony. And sometimes some of your layers will feel the experiment a certain way compared to the other. So see, this is why this is a very, 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 very large subject. And you can see we're only talking about clothes. Imagine all the objects and stuff that you have in this playtime that could basically be treated the same way. So everything will depend on the experience, the avatar consciously, and we're talking about consciously in the way we defined it, remember, which is knowingly wants to experience.
Right.
And then see if this, when it's in the experience, is actually matching what was unconsciously already there. Yes?
Yes.
So for you, linen, a lot of people are going back to linen because there is a big movement that is going back to more natural stuff, more ecological stuff, like fiber that are not synthetic, like all this aspect that is very much mentally and emotionally driven because there is a realization also that the physical aspect of self is being altered by choices that have been made going a certain route. Yes?
Yes.
So if this is stronger than wanting to be in comfort, then the avatar will be aligned with themselves when they choose to wear this type of material. But now, if the experience led by the avatar is more important to be in comfort at all time within their experiment, then it would not be strong enough. Do you see?
Yes. I
So
do.
it really depends. It really depends on what the avatar wants to explore as a game. And also, it depends on what they consciously want to explore and what they, once in the experiment, find themselves to truly want to explore. Yes?
Yes.
Because sometimes you're knowingly want to do something because you're certain that this is the right thing to do because it feels good, because this is what you want to do. But once you're in the experiment, you're like, oh no, hell no, that's not what I wanted to do for myself. That's not at all what I wanted to experiment for myself. And it's okay. But now you just see that there is a contradiction within yourself between what you wish you want to experiment and once you're in the experiment, what you realize that unknowingly you really clearly didn't want to experiment that.
What would be a good way to navigate such a conflict?
That is the question. That is the question because the answer is uncertain. And we're going to explain. If you as a player wanted to experience a game where being in the experiment is what is most important, then you'll be more aligned if you were following the simple fact that you are enjoying the experiment at all times, right? Now, if you're a player that wanted to experiment and wanted to see if the value, something you believed in, what you wanted to incarnate, right, in this game is the most important, even if that means sometimes the experiment being uncomfortable, then keeping the clothes you picked for a specific reason will be more important. But how do you know? How do you know what you decided as a player? There is no real way to know unless you're trying your best to be as authentic as you can be and in your own scale, what will put you in the most enjoyable experiment. Knowing that, yes, you're uncomfortable physically, but at least you respected your values and you stay in perfect integrity to what you strongly believe was the experiment you wanted to have, or this is unbearable and I'm sorry, but what I thought I believed in and what I thought my value were are not strong enough compared to the way I'm feeling physically and how I want to experiment this game. So this is where choices really matter because somehow you have to really, really listen to yourself as a multiple layer self and decide what exactly you want to experiment.
Yeah.
This is the hardest thing to do, Mario. Like, don't get us wrong. This is really hard to do because sometimes you really have the intention of having an entire experience going a certain way, but once you're in it, you realize, no, I just can't handle this. I can't bear this thing. I really don't like that. And no, this is not what I want to do. And this could happen for everything. Let's say you really think that you want to go on the boat because you love the sea, because you love the idea of being on the boat, because you love everything about it, because you're so excited, right? And you hop on that boat and your physical layer is telling you you're motion sick. How about that? How are you going to enjoy that trip now? This is the battle that you can only know once you make the choice to experiment in a certain way. And then when you're in the experiment of your choosing, ask yourself, okay, is it what I wanted to experiment, or is it actually further away from what I wanted to experiment? And then you can make another choice that would lead that way or the other, as long as you're okay with it, meaning as long as you're okay by saying, okay, I am motion sick as hell, I cannot go on the boat anymore, as much as I loved the conceptual idea of being on the boat, I just cannot do it because this is hell to me. You stay in alignment because you're accepting the fact that you had an intention, you went through this intention, you tested it, it did not give you what you were expecting of the game. The experiment was far away from what you thought it would be, and you're accepting the fact that it was far away from what you wanted to be, and you're choosing, okay, I'm accepting this, therefore I'm not going to experiment that again.
Right.
Does it make sense?
It does.
Okay, same with clothing, same with every object. If clothing is making you feel a certain way, and while you're in the experiment with it, the feedback you're receiving or what you're actually experimenting is completely the opposite of what you wanted, then you're free to accept or not and to reorient your choices. But it's very important to understand that this game is made for you to evolve somehow. So sometimes you're going to have to go into a discomfort, into something that was not clearly reflecting your original intention, just because you will learn from this. You will now know that, oh, what I thought would be for sure one consequence, now I can see that there is another option, which is the boat sucks because I'm sick and I'm puking all the way. Okay? And you did not imagine that to start with. But now somehow you're evolving because your spectrum enlarged when it comes to, okay, I see different paths within the same situation.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's, again, highly individual and up to each avatar to navigate their own choices.
Yes, it is. But unfortunately or fortunately, their own choices are heavily impacted, whether they know it or not, by everything designed in this game. Because there are set of vibrations that will automatically be confronted with other set of vibrations and therefore react to each other.
So is it about becoming more and more aware of this?
Yes. And this is what we are okay with the term awareness. Okay. Awareness in the way you use that word and the definition you put behind, we're okay with it because you can choose anything, right? There is no right or wrong or whatever, but there is awareness of what is being experienced. And once you have that awareness and that free will, then you're unlimited because you already know that what you know going into an experiment might not be all there is in their experiment. Meaning, what you think you know, once you put yourself out there and you're living it, if you're aware, that means you're already accepting the possibility that you don't know. That basically what you think you know is not going to be the only possible outcome of this experiment. Do you see what we're trying to say?
Yes.
And this is what we call awareness, is not being aware of everything that is being aware that if you think you know and what you know might not be the only things or experiment that is possible once you're living it.
That's a big one.
Yes, it is. This is what we are thinking is evolving, lining up, being aware. Because you see, we're talking about Russian dolls, we're talking about higher, 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 higher. We're talking about design that have so many details involved, so many layers, so many set of vibrations. So we're talking about something that is basically infinite, right? Something that is exponential, something that is so big that it cannot be comprehended within the human brain, at least, right?
Right.
If you can come to terms with that, then the more you know, the less you know. The more you realize that you don't know, basically. And once you're okay with that, this is what makes this game incredible because you are open to every consequence, even the one that you did not see coming, that you did not think about, you did not feel existed. You know that once you make a choice, you will have the outcome that you already integrated, digested, and are able to put back. But you will also have the unknown possibility that you haven't yet received, integrated, digested, and put back. And this is what being aware is. And this is what will allow you to evolve on a super speed level. And accepting that those possibilities might be the one that you will experiment and that you will decide to go with, and that this is exactly how it is, accepting will also push you, speed up your ascension in the definition that you put behind ascension. Yes?
Yes. Everything you just mentioned sounds as if all of that is going directly against everything the ego would do.
Yes, of course. Because remember, we mentioned it. Ego loves to know, loves to anticipate because it's safety. Something that you cannot control because you don't even know exists. This is something that is unpredictable. So you might be at risk. You might be in danger. You might experiment something that you are not comfortable with, that you don't like, that is just not what your intention was. And being aware of that is already somehow dancing with your ego because it's already preparing that aspect of yourself that is the ego and telling that aspect, okay, I know that you like to protect me. I know that you like when everything is known and under control. Be aware. We're about to step into an experiment. Yes, we'll have A, B, C, D, E, as you already know and planned it. But there is 26 letter in the alphabet, and all the others, we have no idea if they exist or not. Yes? So be aware that this could be a possibility that we fall onto a different letter, one that you don't know, that the opportunity might be shaky, might be unstable because you could not have planned it. So be aware that it's possible and let's go. This is a good way to dance with your ego because you're not trying to tell it, shut up, leave me alone. You're trying to tell him, oh, thank you for doing a good job. Thank you for preparing me. I'm just, telling you that there are also other options that you might not see, and it's okay. We're just going to go with the flow, see what happens, and make sure that we'll pick the experiment that is best suiting us. Yes?
Will that calm the ego and kind of pull it into the boat, or is it an absolute nightmare for the ego to hear that?
Let's say it's not an absolute nightmare. It's an unwanted thing. But, ego, if you're dancing with, if it's tamed somehow, if it's considered, because this is a good point to mention, if you consider that aspect of yourself, then somehow it makes it easier for ego to accept a different route.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So the ego can evolve with us.
Of course they can. Of course, because if this is an evolving game, right, and you're stuck in that vehicle and you're stuck with these layers playing with you, you cannot evolve if the layers themselves don't evolve. It's not possible. So somehow, when we say you are a multidimensional, like you have multiple aspects of yourself within this game, then that means all those multiple aspects of yourself will evolve with you in the game, and sometimes at different speed.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. What would be the next? I don't want to use the word layer because we already connected that to something else, but what would be the next thing an avatar would encounter going beyond clothing in its outside world environment?
Every object you bring back to your place. Because remember, your home is your safety place somehow. Is your nest. You build something that is your foundation, yes?
Mm-hmm.
What is a home? Can you put a definition behind this word so we can see if it matches ours?
Well, I would say, like you said, my home is my place of safety. It's where I can retreat, where I feel safe, comfortable, where I spend a lot of my time. So it's also a direct expression of myself in a way. And yeah,
Okay.
like safety.
Okay, so we agree on this. Your home is where you're going to retreat when you feel like you need to recharge. You need to regroup with yourself. Why? Because, like you said, you made your home at your image somehow. You made it so it feels, it is known to be, and it is felt to be good, safe, nurturing, nourishing, reassuring, all this good stuff that is basically loading your battery. Yes?
Yes.
That will be kind of your shield, like your cocoon, like something that you will feel unbreachable, right? And that would be your way of plugging into yourself. This is what we put behind home. So whatever you decide to put in terms of energy and therefore in terms of objects, colors, people, sound, visuals, everything that would be in a home, and on top of it, the place where your home is put, all of this would create a pattern of vibration that would normally if it's really your home, match with you and resonate with you, at least at the T moment, right? And that would keep you in that safety zone, in that feel good, in that, oh, let me retreat into my cocoon. Let me make sure that, I'm shielded. Okay. But if you are an evolving being within your own game, then your home somehow that is reflecting yourself, that is your nest, that is your shield, that is your cocoon, that is your safety net, needs to evolve with you as well, correct? So in terms of objects, in terms of what is in your home, it needs to be fluctuating. It needs to be changed from time to time. And sometimes even the place, the geographic place of your home needs to change when it's possible, because if you're evolving and you're not making any changes within your nest, your own shield, then you're creating a misalignment and an imbalance for yourself, because it's basically you're telling yourself, I'm going to plug myself back, okay? I'm going to charge myself up, but I'm going to charge myself up with something that I haven't changed when I have changed.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
So in that sense, all the objects and everything that you're going to bring into your house have an importance. What you call the vibe of your home has an importance. Every being you're going to accept in your home have an importance. The timing, because your playtime is triggered by time, your timing within your home is going to have an importance as well. Everything you're going to experiment within this home is going to have an impact as well. So let's go back to your question. That was, refresh our memory.
Regarding the home?
The very beginning, yeah.
Well, I asked what would be the next layer we encounter beyond the clothes.
Yeah. That was the layer behind the cloth. Exactly. Thank you. So then the next layer, that will be your foundation layer. That will be what you call your safety place. Yes.
Yeah.
So the home being the foundation, that will be your main layer. If you want to have let's say, a resourceful place that will actually fuel you in an alignment with yourself, you need to make sure that your foundation is resembling you, that your foundation is collecting patterns of vibrations that are actually resonating with your own vibration at any moment of your experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you need to make changes, and it's okay. But when you feel like when you're going home, something's off, that you're sick and tired of seeing this object, that you're sick and tired of seeing this at this place, that you want to move stuff around, it might be a little more complicated when you're sharing the house. But if it's your own cocoon, by all means, do those changes. Because if you are feeling or thinking or just having any aspect of yourself engaged in wanting to switch the vibrational pattern in your own place, then you start with it. because this is where you're going to get resource, get plugged back, get recharged at any time. We're talking about objects and stuff. This is easy to change, right? Objects you can remove easily, you can bring in easily. There are other stuff that may be harder, like the geographic location of the house. Sometimes you have to deal with. But let's say you're in a busy area, you cannot move your house, but you change everything inside to bring more natural stuff, natural light, because we're still, continuing on the natural trend with the line and clothes and everything, right? So
Right.
let's bring this. So maybe you bring more of earthy colors, so more of the greens, more of the browns, more of the kind of like natural tone, new tone that you can see within nature. You maybe put more plants within your house. You may just like have some background music of bird chirping and stuff like that. That would somehow, if you cannot change the location of your house, bring the location that you would love to have your house in. Does that make sense?
It does. I can very much relate to this. It's exactly what I did.
Then you go. Then you exactly what we're talking about. That's perfect. So this is one thing you can do, and you'll see that already the vibrational pattern, even if it's not pushed to the fullest change, okay, because obviously you cannot carry your house and put it somewhere else, but somehow changed already and changed enough that it will allow you to recharge with the correct resonance of vibration.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So that's one thing one can do. And this is also true for someone living in nature. Let's say someone living in nature, craving for urban life, they can do the same. Bring more urban vibes into your home, like more metal, more maybe bricks, more some like a kind of a commercial like decor or whatever, something that would makes you feel like you're in a city, very industrial, all this stuff. This is true also this way. If you want to travel, let's say if you want to be in an exotic place, then do this as well. Bring some more exotic stuff into your house if you can. Sometimes just a simple picture that you put on your wall will be enough, because you could just sit, watch it, and just let yourself recharge, taking everything that is coming directly at you, because picture vibrations are very strong. Remember, for those who have the sight, this is a very strong sense that can easily absorb information and that will easily somehow receive and then, integrate, digest, and put back. So, regarding the question of other than the clothes, how can one align? There are so many ways, because you really have to understand that everything is carrying a vibrational pattern. And that as you evolve, everything is evolving as well. And if it's not evolving on your pace, it needs to be shifted just so it can resonate with you.
Believe that a lot of listeners will be able to relate to that. I can definitely say that there were different times in my past where I made like an internal shift. I understood something, or I let go of an old pattern, and I felt the strong urge to buy new clothes.
Yeah.
Or get rid of old ones, or I needed to redecorate something in my home. And that always aligned with these changes on the emotional layer or mental layer. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. Because remember, you're changing within your own game, so let the game change with you. If you want to create a reality that is actually matching you, that we're talking about alignment. So if you want to evolve in a playtime in a game that you are aligned with, it starts also with the decor of that game. And the decor of that game, we mentioned it, is the environment, is the people, is you, and you with all the layer, is basically every set of information that you can grasp that can impact you. So it's pretty much everything. So whatever you can somehow arrange or rearrange or switch or change or adapt, by all means do it.
Mm-hmm.
It is also true with your surrounding in terms of people. Family is family, so sometimes it's a little more complicated because it's family. But if you see that you are not in resonance with some of the avatars that are actually heavily impacting your game, try to put a little more distance. It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be for your entire experiment on Earth, but it has to be at the moment where you feel distance is needed for you to be able to continue evolving and for you to have a surrounding that is matching that evolution.
Right.
This is also why a lot of you guys, when they are shifting, when they are evolving, when they are on to the next level of their own game, they found themselves having issues or having difficulties with keeping the exact same relationship going that they actually have with whoever. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be lovers, it can be stranger, it can be coworker, you name them. It can be any type of relation, but they are finding difficulties continuing, and they are finding that others are sending back at them that they are different, that they are changing, that, ooh, but I don't know this person. Like, who are you? And usually it's harder to navigate when this happens, but at the same time, one should be proud because if you are trying to change yourself, if you are trying to align yourself to change your way of experimenting so it can resonate with you more, it can resemble you more, the fact that someone else is telling you, gosh, you have changed, should be a blessing. You should be celebrating. You should be, oh, yeah, you know it. That means you're doing something right.
Right.
Is it going to be simple? No, it might be difficult because now that you have changed, it means that your interactions are changing as well. Basically, what you are getting from that person is different. What this person was feeding off of you is different. And you both don't have what you were, drawing from each other. It doesn't mean that you cannot be interacting with each other. It just means that you need to be in acceptance that the dynamics between the two of you somehow evolved because at least one of you evolved, and therefore, if one of you evolved, that means the other evolved as well, and that means the interaction evolved as well. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Yes. So this is also not something to be afraid of. It could be very uncomfortable. We could agree with that. But at the same time, one cannot expect to make changes and nothing change because we all agreed from the beginning of these conversations that everything and everyone is somehow connected, that this is not a single game, it's a collective game in Earthian Realm playtime and outside. This is a collective game being played. So therefore, we are all playing together. Therefore, if one little thing changes, everything is going to be shaky. Everything is going to be changing. And as long as you can accept and agree and tell your ego and other aspects of your surrounding that, oh, shit, it's changing. Okay, let's just buckle up. Like, we're not sure, but we're going to try our best to make choices that all aspects of ourselves could be okay with and make the experiment enjoyable, or at least what we would like to experiment. So if things are shaky, it's okay. We are dealing with it. We are accepting that it has to be shaky because if it was not shaky, it means we will be stagnant. And you cannot live this game properly and you cannot experiment properly if you are stagnant. You have somehow to be evolving in alignment or outside of your alignment. This is for your game to tell, but you have to be evolving.
I believe that's an excellent point to make and a great entry into a new box of topics and questions. However, we have reached the end of our time for it.
Okay. And we feel like we haven't even started on the subject. We feel like we just basically opened the front page,
Exactly.
This is so big. And this is what amazes us. The beauty of having a game that is connected to everything designed within it makes the game like limitless and endless and so vast that it's very hard to define and to start scratching the surface, especially using words.
Yes.
Yeah. So conceptually, it's already something. It's already a mountain. But if we have to break down the conceptual aspect into wording and then make sure that we're all okay with the definition of the words, then this is even more complicated and it could take forever. This is why we believe that for the sake of this, and once again, because everything is evolving, it doesn't mean that it has to be the end of it. But because for the sake of this, we need to narrow down on those upcoming chapters that can be so vague. And then in the future, we could come back and then dig a little further, yeah?
Yes, we'll definitely take you up on that offer.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much for breaking very complex things down into pieces that we are able to digest. We appreciate that immensely.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So thank you so much for introducing the aspect of family and people relationships into this. Super interesting, I believe, to many, many listeners out there. And we will dive back into that immediately at the start of next session, okay?
Yes.
All right. So we're putting a pin in it here and now, and I'm looking forward very much to our next conversation.
Yes, this should be fun.
All right. We thank Rufus and all others involved here today for the information and support they have given us. With much love and deep gratitude, we're asking all energies and entities to recede where they belong and reside. Have you ever wanted to work with higher dimensional beings yourself? Then why not join my Transformative Soul Journeys Quantum Hypnosis training? In 4 clear, easy-to-follow modules, you will learn how to guide deep explorations filled with clarity, insight, and guidance for others. For more information, visit thesouljourneys.com.